Hi guys, I thought I'd do a quick video and run the motor here. This is the Make It Run motor. I've got the 460 adapter on it with the torquer intake, 750 carb. I've also put those 460 headers on it, but I've done some measurements and these probably are not going to work for the truck. This comes out to 30.5 inches across from header to header outside. And I measured the frame on the truck, and I've only got about 24, maybe 24.5 inches across the frame. So I'm going to have headers that are substantially tighter to the motor in order to fit for the truck. But I'm still going to run it. I'm going to do this outside probably, or at least with the door open. And these headers are going to smoke like crazy. These are early, and it's going to probably burn all this paint off. I'm also going to move a dynamic speaker all the way to the back of the shop in order to see if I can get a decent sound without clipping out of the motor so you guys can hear what I hear. But you probably won't be able to hear me talk, so I'm doing a little splurb here ahead of time. Now, it's the same motor we've run. It did start the other day, but I ran it for less than a minute because it started smoking so well. I did have the distributor out and ignition off. I had to borrow this ignition for another project that I did. But I put it all back in, so timing may not be perfect, but it ought to be pretty close. The carburetor has actually been on a small block Chevy, so the carburetor is not going to be correct either. I'll work on the idle mixture a little bit, but it should be well enough for the run stand. It certainly needs some work to go drive around, but we're not doing that at the moment. So we should be okay. Everything else in the motor is the same. Remember, this is a stock motor. The bottom end has not even been apart. I hand lapped the valves. We have new stem seals and some of that. I also reclocked the stock camshaft. This is the one where I moved the camshaft 10 degrees and took all that factory retard out of the factory camshaft. So it's still a factory cam, but it's now sitting in 4 degrees, plus 4 degrees, instead of retarded 6. And so it'll probably sound a little different, but that's the same way we ran it. And remember, this was like a stocker motor. I mean, when we did that kind of, wasn't a great run on the dyno, it was a 300, just over 300 horsepower motor. So it's basically a stock motor. And so I would like to get this particular motor back on the dyno. I've got 3 different intakes I have prepped for this, and some of them I need to practice run on this run stand first. Like I said, this is the Torquer 1. I also have the Torquer 2, which is basically just a little bigger runner. And I just kind of like to see what the power curve does on the dyno. But I also have the dual quad, dual plane. And Larry Kruzak always swore that was a fantastic intake. And so I'm kind of curious to see how it does. But I've prepped 2 500 Carter or Edelbrock carburetors. And I had to rebuild them. They've been used on something else. They had a lot of fussing around. So I really need to get it on the run stand with that intake too. And make sure that those 2 carbs run. And I'll probably do a little, at least a short with that running when I get to that point. But at the present moment, I'm going to shut this off and hook up the other speaker, roll up the door. It is cold outside, so I'm not sure how long I'll run this for. It is trying to snow here. It rained all morning, so I'm trying to do it just inside the door instead of outside. But we'll see if we can't make it run. Hopefully I don't get too fumed out by the headers. And hopefully the sound works good and you guys can kind of hear how this runs. And then we'll have to figure out another choice on headers. I do have those other Flowtech ones that are very similar to these that I might be able to cut the flange and tilt the header in and maybe get it a little tighter to the block. I'll look into that and see if maybe that'll work. Or I might have to look at the Cadco, I think they have a truck header. They might might call it a universal. I'll have to look. But we might at least mock one up on a block and measure its width and see if it's anywhere close to what I think is going to work on the truck. Now, I'm not as worried about right up here at the flange, but if you look, these are pretty much straight down, and I'm sure the problem is going to be down here. But anyway, let's get this thing fired up and see if we can't get you hearing it. I'll splice the two videos together, and so the next moment you ought to hear this thing start and run, and we'll see how it goes. Talk to you later. Bye. Alright, sorry, I tried doing that other microphone and it didn't appear to work. I don't know if my extension cord has got a problem. I tried a second microphone on it and it didn't work either. So I don't think it's the microphone itself. So at this point I'm just going to have to call it a day. Sorry, still haven't got good sound that you guys could hear because the tablet was just recording the sound, so it's horrible as usual. The header paint, of course, burned off, and that was to be expected. Carburetor ran real well. I'm not real sure where timing is. Everything else seemed to work okay. I forgot to hook up the vacuum line, and it's not long enough to reach, so I'm going to have to fix that. I had moved the control panel, and so everything has gotten to where it's kind of short. In fact, I need to probably even do something about this oil pressure. But I had a vacuum leak here for idle. That was part of the reason I had a high idle. Turning it down, it ran good. I have a slight water leak. It's really small, but at the thermostat housing that I made. And so I need to look at that. Might have to go to a different gasket, maybe one of those expensive silicone ones. But that'll look at and run again and see if I can fix the sound, and we'll try running this again. It had a little bit of smoke on the passenger side, blue smoke initially, but remember we had a vacuum leak at the intake manifold when I ran it on the dyno. I thought maybe we had damaged the motor, but it actually turned out to just be the leaky intake. That's fixed, but it obviously still had oil in the cylinders, so it smoked a little while. Once that went away, it went to black smoke, so the carburetor is rich, which I kind of expected. We did come from a small block to this Caddy, so it probably needs to be jetted down some. So I'll work on that too. Everything else seemed to work just fine. It had really good oil pressure. It got up to full temperature, so I know the pressure in the system was there, and it's just a really minor leak, but I'll work on that. And of course, we'll pull these headers off and maybe look at doing something else when I run this again. And I will pre-test the microphone. I originally wanted to make sure you guys heard it on its initial startup, but next time when I go to run it, I'll run a video ahead of time, make sure that that extended microphone is working, and see if we can't get you to actually hear this thing. I will probably cut, I have like 12 minutes of video of this running, and I don't know if I'll just let it run or if I'll cut it short and then splice this part in on the end. But that was the Make It Run motor with the 460 intake. Sounds really good. I wish you could have heard it. It responds really quick, which I would expect with this intake. It is a smaller runner, single plane, so it has pretty good throttle response. It sounds real good. It certainly doesn't sound like a stock Caddy anymore. And I'll be curious to see how it does. I'm not sure it's making any more horsepower, but it might make a little more torque with this intake. Like I said, maybe the next time I run it, we'll try the dual quad on it and make sure that that's working okay. And I will work in the meantime on seeing if I can't get sound better. And at the moment, I think we're going to call it a day. I wish you luck on all your projects. And this one went okay, and we'll see if we can't do better. Talk to you later. Bye.